In 1968, during the Apollo 8 mission, something happened that rewired humanity's perception of itself forever. This was the first time humans left Earth orbit and saw the entire planet as a single, fragile entity floating in the void. The mission to conquer space faded into the background because in that instant, seeing all of humanity from a third-person perspective didn't just alter their own perception. It would go on to reshape the collective consciousness itself. As three astronauts gazed back through the cabin window, the silence enveloped the spacecraft. The Earth did not look like a collection of competing civilizations, nor did it seem like a battleground for human progress against the natural world. All of us have been taught 1, 2, 3, and A, B, C. But very few of us were ever told about the game of black and white. It is quite simple, actually. Most of us have the sensation that I, myself, is a separate center of feeling and action, living inside and bounded by the physical body, a center which confronts an external world of people and things, making contact through the senses with a universe both alien and strange. The easiest way to see this in action is to look at everyday figures of speech that reflect this illusion. I came into this world. You must face reality, the conquest of nature. The first result of this illusion is that our attitude to the world outside us is largely hostile. We are forever conquering nature, space, mountains, deserts, and oceans, instead of learning to cooperate with them in a harmonious order. In America, the great symbols of this conquest are the bulldozer and the rocket, the instrument that batters the hills into flat tracts for little boxes made of ticky-tacky, and the great phallic projectile that blasts the sky. The hostile attitude of conquering nature ignores the basic interdependence of all things and events, that the world beyond the skin is actually an extension of our own bodies, and will end in destroying the very environment from which we emerge, and upon which our whole life depends. The second result of feeling that we are separate minds in an alien and mostly stupid universe is that we have no common sense, no way of making sense of the world on which we are agreed in common. There was never a time when the world began, because it goes round and round like a circle, and there is no place on a circle where it begins. Look at my watch, which tells the time. It goes round, and so the world repeats itself again and again. But just as the hour hand of the watch goes up to 12 and down to 6, so too there is day and night, waking and sleeping, living and dying, summer and winter. You can't have any one of these without the other, because you wouldn't be able to know what black is unless you had seen it side by side with white, or white unless side by side with black. In the same way, there are times when the world is and times when it isn't. Or, if the world went on and on without rest forever and ever, it would get horribly tired of itself. It comes and it goes. Now you see it, now you don't. So, because it doesn't get tired of itself, it always comes back again after it disappears. It's like your breath. It goes in and out to in and out. And if you try to hold it in all the time, you feel terrible. It's also like the game of hide and seek, because it's always fun to find new ways of hiding, and to seek for someone who doesn't always hide in the same place. Consider first that all your 5 senses are differing forms of one basic sense, something like touch. Seeing is highly sensitive touching. The eyes touch or feel light waves, and so enable us to touch things out of reach of our hands. Similarly, the ears touch sound waves in the air, and the nose tiny particles of dust and gas. But the complex patterns and chains of neurons which constitute these senses are composed of neuron units which are capable of changing between just two states, on or off. To the central brain, the individual neuron signals either yes or no, that's all. But as we know from computers, which employ binary arithmetic in which the only figures are 0 and 1, these simple elements can be formed into the most complex and marvelous patterns. In this respect, our nervous system and our soul, one, computers are much like everything else. For the physical world is basically vibration. In other words, there is no such thing as a half wave or a particle all by itself, without any space around it. There's no on without off, and no up without down. Every sound is actually sound and silence. Only the ear does not register this consciously when the alternation is too rapid. Light, too, is not pure light, but light and darkness. Light pulsates in waves with their essential up and down motion, and in some conditions, the speed of light vibrations can be synchronized with other moving objects, so that the latter appear to be still. It is almost a general principle that consciousness ignores intervals. Many people imagine that in listening to music, they hear simply a succession of tones. If that were true, as it is in the exceptional cases of tone-deaf people, they would hear no music, no melody whatsoever, only a succession of noises. Hearing melody is hearing the intervals between the tones, even though you may not realize it. Most people think, for example, that space is just nothing. Can we imagine one lonely body, the only ball in the universe, in the midst of empty space? Perhaps. But this ball would have no energy, no motion. In relation to what could it be said to be moving? Things are said to move only when compared with others that are relatively still. For motion is motion and stillness. We suppose that solids are one thing and space quite another, or just nothing whatever. Then it appeared that space was no mere nothing, because solids couldn't do without it. But the mistake in the beginning was to think of solids and space as two different things, instead of as two aspects of the same thing. The point is that they are different but inseparable, like the front end and the rear end of a cat. Cut them apart, and the cat dies. Take away the crest of the wave, and there is no trough. A similar solution applies to the ancient problem of cause and effect. Here's someone who has never seen a cat. He's looking through a narrow slit in a fence, and on the other side, a cat walks by. He sees first the head, then the less distinctly shaped furry trunk, and then the tail. Extraordinary. The cat turns around and walks back, and again he sees the head, and a little later the tail. This sequence begins to look like something regular, unreliable. Yet again the cat turns around, and he witnesses the same regular sequence. First the head and later the tail. Thereupon he reasons that the event, head, is the invariable and necessary cause of the event, tail, which is the head's effect. This absurd and confusing gobbledygook comes from his failure to see that the head and tail go together. They are all one cat. The cat wasn't born as a head which sometime later caused the tail. It was born all of a piece, a head-tailed cat. Our observer's trouble was that he was watching it through a narrow slit and couldn't see the whole cat at once. The narrow slit in the fence is much like the way in which we look at life by conscious attention. For when we attend to something, we ignore everything else. In other words, we do not play the game of black and white. Instead, We play the game of black versus white, or more usually white versus black, especially when rates of vibration are slow, as with day and night or life and death. We are forced to be aware of the black or negative aspect of the world. Then, not realizing the inseparability of the positive and negative poles of the rhythm, we are afraid that black may win the game. But the game white must win is no longer a game. It is a fight haunted by a sense of chronic frustration because we are doing something as crazy as trying to keep the mountains and get rid of the valleys,